Hi, everybody. How's it going? Well, I guess, given the new administration and particularly following President Trump's speech to Congress last night, I don't know about you, but I think it's a good time to talk about civic duty, civic responsibility. And I don't consider myself a person versed in, the history of civics. And I'm certainly not going to give any civics lesson today, but I want a conversation with you about it, because I guess the way I understand it is there's an equation. On the left side of the equation is our rights. Starting with the preamble of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, there are all the words of we are all created equal, so we deserve to have treatment that is not biased by race or by gender or by disability or by religion. We deserve to be equal members of the society and receive the police protection and the non-interference of government in our private affairs. All these things that we have deemed to be our rights as individuals. And in return, what seems to me the very bare minimum that we owe as our civic duty in order to receive those rights are to obey laws. That would be clear. To serve on a jury because we believe in the jury process, and when we are summoned, we try to show up and do our civic duty to act as part of as a jury member. We also agree to pay government taxes. So those are the bare minimum, but what I want to talk today is about, is there a civic duty, a responsibility beyond the absolute bare obey the laws sort of end of civic duty? For instance, do we volunteer? Do we get involved with local politics? Do we vote in elections? Do we stay informed? And it's our civic duty to know who is representing us and what are the laws of the land. And how about the environment? I know when I was a kid, it was still de rigueur that you'd be driving along in a car and you'd throw your gum out the window. I mean, we now have 7 billion people on the planet. Imagine if everybody every day just decided that whatever little bit of trash they have, that it's okay to throw it onto the road, onto the roadway, into the waterways. We know better now. And now there are not just laws, but we all take it. We mostly take it as our civic responsibility that we do not throw trash and litter. And then we take a further step. Do we recycle? Do we know where batteries go? Evidently, and they're all different kinds of batteries, but the more we're informed, we know that we really should take that old battery of ours and not just throw it in our weekly trash to go into the city environment, but that battery should go to a very specific plant for its, deionization, etc. So that's what I want to talk with you about today. Where does that fine line end? Is it civic duty? Is there civic responsibility? Or if you just stay clean, you stay your nose out of it, you don't dirty the environment, you take short showers to save our water supply, you recycle, you summon, you don't try to get out of jury duty, you really go and pay your dues as a jurist. Is that enough? Or are we at a stage in our society today, and I'm not necessarily picking on and defaming President Trump. I'm really not. Are we at a stage where we need to bump it up? I guess the famous, and it will always be the most famous rhetorical question about this was JFK, wasn't it? Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. It's so poetic. It was so charged at the time in the early 60s. And I dare say we're feeling that rhetorical, pressing question today more than we ever have been. This past Saturday night, I was invited to a beautiful private dinner at liberal radio show host Stephanie Miller's house. And Stephanie Miller gathered a number of forward-thinking, progressive people in our town, Los Angeles. Lily Tomlin was there, and her partner and the great writer Jane Wagner was there. Gloria Allred, out representing basically women's rights, but a number of different issues that have to do with civic rights in our country. And a number of interesting people were there, and it wasn't about taking selfies. It wasn't about telling, funny stories and everybody being the life of the party. It was about how engaged are we? The current and 20-year-long president of LA's chapter of Planned Parenthood was there, Sue Dunlap, and she was talking about how many volunteers they have these days, how much more money, I forget her figures, but millions more dollars given today than were even just a year ago to Planned Parenthood, because there are people out there who feel all of a sudden that maybe their civic rights, their civic values in terms of women, immigrants, Jews, abortion rights, the environment, all kinds of things are under some sort of assault, if not being trespassed upon. And she feels that a lot of people are coming to Planned Parenthood to help because it's right now, more than ever, their civic duty to step up and try to protect the values they feel are in danger of being lost. Elizabeth Warren makes a lot of sense to me. I remember her saying, not too long after the election itself, so that was, back in November, something like, well, if you're worried about the Supreme Court going in a very conservative direction, you're worried about Roe v. Wade being under attack and being rescinded after all these years of our fighting for women's rights to govern their own bodies. If you're worried about the Environmental Protection Agency, and now we have a guy in charge who, has voted against a number of clean water and clean air acts in his career. If you're worried about fracking and oil drilling happening in places that we have fought hard not to have, and those actions happen, and it's always a fine line between, well, how many people are losing their jobs? How many people, need to be deep oil well drilling to support their families? Fair enough. All of these things are up for discussion and debate, and try to come to a medium that everybody feels respected. But Elizabeth Warren, to me, said the most intelligent thing right after the election sometime. She said, look, if you're worried about the Supreme Court going in a direction you don't like, if you feel that we've lost control over Congress, the White House, the Senate, in terms of values we wanted to protect. Look, Mike Pence is a full-on religious guy, and I got no problem with that. If Mike Pence were sitting in my study right now with me, if we were to have a coffee tonight and he told me how deep his feelings are for his God and what he feels about his church and about his religious tenets, would never argue with him whatsoever. I would say, I respect your views. It's interesting, and that's the way you live, and you should live that way. But didn't we fight a long, long time ago to separate church and state? So when Mike Pence stands up in the 80s, when he first came into government in Indiana, and said, if I do anything in this career of mine in politics, I am going to I'm going to fight and take down Roe v. Wade. Abortion is wrong at any state, in any condition, and we were going to fight abortion rights for women in this country. Well, I got a big problem with that. So Elizabeth Warren says, you feel like you've lost power, Supreme Court, White House, Congress, Senate. But you as an individual in this society, you have civic rights, and through your acting out of your civic duty, you have power. You can go to Planned Parenthood. You can go to the Environmental Protection Agency. You can go to anti-fracking organizations. You can go all out to the things that mean something to you. So something that you want to fight for and you feel that you're losing governmental control over. And you can donate money. You can donate time. You can write articles. You can get on social media and get a talk going. It's not about anger. It's not about hate. It's about standing up for what you believe in. So that, to me, is the definition of civic duty. And I must say that being informed is part of that, even before the action. I will tell you, I will admit that I'm a fairly well-read, well-informed person. I've been reading the New York Times all of my adult life, etc. But I don't have a good, not to mention deep history. I don't have a good history in terms of American politics and American civics. I don't. I'm very weak in these areas. But in the last couple of months, I've decided I need to be informed. I need to know what's going on. I don't think President Trump is a bad person. I think he wants to be a good president. I think he believes in the words he says, that he wants people to live good lives in this country, and that he believes, we should stand up for our country and not all the other shores of the world. All that sounds fine, but I do worry about some of the values, some of the people he's brought in his cabinet, and I want to be informed. So for the first time ever, I've been reading about the TPP, and I've been reading about, Article 25. I've been reading about things that I have just been absolutely ignorant about, and I think at this juncture in our American history, it's part of my civic duty to be better informed than I've been. So, anybody weighing in? Anybody gonna kill me or have some additions to say? I've got Gabby with us today. Gabby's always helping. Who wants to know something?
Natalie Dorfeld says, I too love U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren. My question to you, how do you balance being an activist versus self-care? I become very angry when I watch the news now.
Yeah, it's funny because you're saying angry, and I have a number of friends who have just tuned out. They're so upset at what's going on that they can't even engage. They've decided to virtually lock their doors, don't want to hear it, don't want to read about it, and what am I going to judge? I can't judge anybody, right? I haven't been that great, as I said before, a civic duty citizen myself, but it's not my way. And I guess, for instance, listening to President Trump last night, compared to a lot of my liberal friends, I wasn't as angry as I have been in the past. I wasn't as scared. I worry about that cabinet. I worry about Bannon and his ideas. I worry about Pence and his, tendencies. But President Trump last night didn't make me as angry. He made me more trusting than I have been in the past. I sensed some, true sincerity to his overall delivery of his message, that he cares. He cares about all of us, and he doesn't want hate and war and violence. So, may just call me Pollyanna, but I sensed a bit of that, but I don't blame you. If you sat there, I have a number of friends, most of my friends sat through the speech last night and didn't go in that Pollyanna direction. We're angry, we're just as riled up as ever, just thought it was the wolf in sheep's clothing, whatever. And I think it's up to you. You've got to get square. You don't have to be a full-on activist, but if you're feeling afraid, you talk with your friends, you as I said, you volunteer down the neighborhood for something good that's going on that you believe in for your community. But I hear what you're saying. I do know a lot of people who can't get square between getting up and getting their activism going and retreating because they're just so darn upset about what's going on.
Carol Frazee says, how can we get more women running for office?
I was just in Key West, and there's a councilwoman down there. She's actually on the county board rather than the city board for Monroe County, and she, it's sort of my naivete is I think that most politicians grew up in politics, and we can take Trump as the extreme example of this. But Heather Carruthers from Key West, she is just a person who lives out her civic duty. So a number of years ago, friends said to her, you're very articulate, you're very passionate, you really know your community, you know the entire length of the Florida Keys, you know what's going on, you know some of the wrongs that are being done, the citizens of your community. Why don't you run for public office? She never thought of herself. She wasn't like growing up through high school and college and graduate school to groom herself to be a politician. Some people are lifelong politicians. Hillary Clinton, for example, I guarantee she'll be back. She'll be doing some good work, and clearly the Obamas will too. But I just never thought that lots of people are just local bankers and grocery store owners. There's a matter of fact, there's a grocery store in Key West. It's a chain, very kind of high end and very successful, called Fausto's. Well, the son of the Fausto's founder, Jimmy Weekly, is now a city commissioner for Key West. He just, because of the grocery work and then friends, he's become involved in what's going on in people's lives. And, you know, they want justice. So there's the judicial system and there's the political system. So a lot of people go into running for public office, and when you hear about their backgrounds, they were never political people at all. And I think that women, a lot of women, are now realizing that they see the examples we are, the Nancy Pelosi's of the world, the Heather Carruthers of the world in Key West, and they say, why shouldn't I? I'm a local successful businesswoman. I know what the issues are for small businesses in my town, my city. I know a lot of people. I'm already on the education board, the PTA board, whatever it is. Why don't I reach out and get the influencers I know to come together and talk about some of these wrongs that we'd like righted, or some of these laws that we'd like, shifted a little bit to match the community who's living here now. So when you say, why don't more women run for public office, I can't give you any statistics sitting here at the moment, but from my understanding of it, more and more women are running for public office.
Daniel Matthews says, people seem to forget that every individual has the ultimate power to be the change they want to see in the world. Make a difference in the lives of people around you, and the world will be a better place.
Daniel, I'm going to ask Gabby to read that again, because it's poetic. People have said it in different ways, but I like the way you say it. Let's all listen to it. Go ahead, Gabby.
People seem to forget that every individual has the ultimate power to be the change that they want to see in the world. Make a difference in the lives of people around you, and the world will be a better place. Well,
that's well said. Where are you from, Daniel? Do we have an indication on there? Anyway, you'll probably write back in and tell us. But, so many people have said this. Steve Jobs has had when he was alive, a wonderful quote out about, the future is what you can imagine it to be, something like that. But I agree. We're not living in a dictatorship, are we? We're not living in an authoritarian society where we have no choices. There is a wonderfully intelligent Russian painter in my house at the very moment. He's in the next room painting some beautiful murals, and he left Russia because he wanted freedom. And so he can be here and he can say, this is no perfect society, no perfect country, but the one thing he has is freedom to be who he wants to be in his neighborhood, in his children's school, in my house here. And it's true that we don't always get the economic choices we want, and sometimes we get bad luck in terms of illnesses, but basically we have a freedom to act out our ethics and our beliefs day to day in our lives. People often ask me, and I think, we're all asked, who do you admire? And I can name so many people whom we all know. I admire Bill and Melinda Gates. I admire Warren Buffett. I don't know if you've seen the new documentary on Warren Buffett, but it just blows your mind how humble this brilliant guy is, and he loves Omaha, Nebraska. To him, that is paradise, and he's never leaving his hometown of Omaha. And you just love his grassroots values. And this guy is, I don't know, I've forgotten where he is on the list of most wealthy people in the world, but he's very near the top. And so I do admire people like that, and the people who do, exemplary things with their wealth. But honestly, always, I've admired that person down the street who wants to help their community. They see something going on that's just not right, and they step up and they decide to, start a new little litter program in their own community, or a child care, you know, something in their own homes where they see that a lot of parents have nowhere to put their kids as they go to work during the day, the young kids, and they don't have the resources to bring in somebody private. So, well said, Daniel. You just live your life with your morals and your ethics, and you show the next person down the street, rise them up to live with those same high sets of morals. You know, Margaret Mead, the sociologist, you know, often said that change comes within each individual's heart and actions. Change doesn't come when some great Gandhi, Obama leader stands up and says, follow me, we're all going to go, Nelson Mandela. These are great people, and a lot of us have followed them, but basically change happens individual by individual, household by household, and then that community gets a set of standards by which they want to live. And that broadens out to the next community, and that becomes our sets of laws. Thank you, Daniel, for writing that in.
Roanoke, Virginia is where
Roanoke, Virginia. All right.
Okay. Tell everybody about it.
We're doing a little a giveaway today. Sort of at the end, Gabby and I are going to sit down and go over all your questions and comments and pick somebody who kind of moved me the most, provoked, you know, the best sort of conversation within this conversation, and see this little beauty shot of me. I only wish I looked that good every day. A wonderful photographer in Miami took this shot. It's like gazing out at the ocean, at the infinitude of the ocean. And so if you're a fan in any way, or if you want this photo, even if you don't want it, we're selecting you at the end, and we're going to sign it up, inscribe it, and send it out to you. Gabby, what else is going on?
Next question from Gabriella Greco. She says, thank you, Diana, for wanting to know more and better informed. How can we present our truth and what we want people to know more about, what we believe in without oversaturating or falling victim to inspiration porn that I have seen happening, especially when it comes to taking a stand for young women like myself who have cerebral palsy?
Gabriella, I have not yet returned the Facebook message that you sent me. But I hope you don't mind. You just mentioned about your situation of cerebral palsy. Gabriella, I hope you don't mind if I tell your story briefly to the people tuning in today. And that is that Gabriella was born 4 months too early. And as we know, that's a desperate window to miss out on development in the fetus, oxygen, etc. So Gabriella was born with a fine mind. She can outthink all the people, including me, on this Facebook Live session today. But body-wise, she was left in a state of somewhat of disability. Evidently, Gabriella, it hasn't kept you from getting around, earning your degrees, being parts of lots of things, but I'm sure it's been a hardship. And you've mentioned that, you know, my gosh, you have to just live up to that first glance that people give you. You know, if you're coming along, you know, and not walking, you know, as smoothly as others do without disabilities, and you've got, you know, crutches and a wheelchair, then that first glance at the grocery store, in the parking lot, you know, at the dog park is going to be different. Something's wrong. She's not the same as the rest of us, and that must be the courage and the strength it must take to believe in yourself and be happy and not worry about what those people are thinking. It's just monstrously heroic. And Gabrielle, I know you've lived a good life regardless of your hardship. So my hat's off to you, and please forgive me for not writing back yet, but I know who you are. I know what your message is, and I'm going to sit down and, you know, make a nice exchange going between the two of us, okay? Now that I said all that, I kind of forgot what you just wrote, what you just asked. So what was it again?
It says, how can we present our truth and what we want people to know more about, what we believe in without oversaturating or falling victim to inspiration porn that I have seen happening, especially when it comes to taking a stand for young women like myself with cerebral palsy? Yeah,
you know, so easy for me to say, right? I walk into a grocery store and no one's going to give me a second look because as a general rule, I kind of look like everybody else. I don't know if you know of my good friend Eric Weinmayer, blind, first man ever to climb Mount Everest. So he knows who he is. He's done extraordinary things. He climbs up waterfalls with ice picks. He does physical things that, 99.999% of adventurers who are, sighted cannot do. He's in the upper echelon, but he's just a guy living in Colorado with a wife and 2 kids. And if he goes to the movies, he's got his seeing eye dog. He's using his stick to go down the sidewalk. He's not like the rest of us. Like you, Gabriella, you are like the rest of us, but that first appearance is not. And as you say, you don't want to be the victim. You're hardly the victim. You're incredibly competent. But how do you teach people who have got to overcome that first glance? If we get a chance to talk to you and hear your good brain and hear what you've got in store for your life, then boom, we're all together. I used to belong to a group called World Team Sports. And the team, the acronym stands for The Exceptional Athlete Matters. And we did things like ride bicycles the length of Vietnam, which is actually where I met Eric Weinmayer. His father was the front part of a tandem bike, and Eric was on the back. And I'll tell you something, people had, legs missing, both legs, double amputees. People had, spinal cord injuries, so they were, quadriplegic and paraplegic, blind, deaf, many people injured in the Vietnam War, which was part of the point of this ride. It was a reconciliation ride with Viet Cong, soldiers from back then. But I'll tell you, on the second, third day of that ride, I never saw a double amputee. I never saw spinal cord paralysis, blindness. We are all riding the same road. That was our motto for World Team Sports. And very quickly, when you engage, when your mind, your body, your life is engaged in the world and other people with you, that cerebral palsy, as you've learned, Gabriella, just disappears. So I think that's your... maybe that's your goal, is to teach. And you say young women, I'm sure it's young men as well, but it's to teach people that they got to be real sure of who they are, be proud of who they are, and walk in to rooms, walk into meetings, and walk over the dog park as if, they know just who they are on the inside, and you, sitting on the park bench at the dog park, seeing somebody who looks a little different coming along in their wheelchair on their crutches, you're going to find out very quickly that they are walking, riding the exact same road you are, and you're probably going to be inferior to them in a lot of ways, and you're going to find out right away. So easy for me to say, be confident, but even as a woman, so many people have asked me, as a woman sportscaster in the early days of women being in sportscasting, was I sloughed aside? Was I insulted? Was I treated in a sexist manner? Never, because I won't allow it. I walk into a room and it's all guys and it's all a big, everybody's going to be telling their sex stories from the night before, and everybody's going to be throwing out bullshit about this and that. I just won't allow it. I just know who I am. I walk in and say, I'm sick of the fiction sex stories from last night. Let's get to the production meeting. I'm here, to have an inspired meeting about whatever we're going to be covering tomorrow. Let's get to it. And everybody's like, whoa, okay, sorry. So easy for me to say, because you've got a tougher life situation than I do in that way anyway. But just teach people to know who you are and act like who you are, not what they at first glance might think you are.
Jan Rokaida says, exactly, being responsible to oneself, family, and community is a stepping stone for greater things to come. Yeah, I like the way you say that, Jen. It's that, it's, if you've got a little bit of cushion, let's say you're making your living, let's say your house is getting paid for, you're not in a panic. You're doing okay, so you can relax a little bit. Well, fair enough, and you deserve to relax. If you've worked that hard, that you're doing okay and you're feeling pretty secure, you deserve to watch some good TV. You deserve to get out in nature
and take a walk, and you deserve to cuddle with your doggy and go to the beach, etc. But what makes you feel good when you go to sleep every night, right, is that you've been engaged, is that you've contributed somehow. You've been part of what makes your household or your community or your town, or let's just get philosophical about it, your world, a better place. And that's what gives us satisfaction. We all want to be part of this community, whether you look at it as the small community of you and your partner, or a little bit broader, or this whole big wide world like a Nelson Mandela would do. You know, I often take an assessment when I go to bed, and yeah, I have very personal dreams, and I move toward those, you know, creative works that I want to do before my days are up. But I also check in, and this kind of gets us back to that civic responsibility, civic duty. What kind of a teammate, what kind of a community member was I during this day as my head hits the pillow? You know, did I stand up for anybody? Did I sign my name to anything? Did I read about and care about somebody doing something great and I want to add my name to the petition, or go down and volunteer there next week? I got to check in on that level, and I can't say I do every single night as a ritual, but often enough that I feel like I'm engaged in my community, small or large.
Just two quick check-ins. Gabriella says, thank you so very, very much. That's the place she's getting to, not allowing it.
There you go, Gabriella. As I said, easier said for me than you, but I could tell from your email that you have a tremendous spiritual strength. So go give him hell. Give him hell.
And Daniel also sent back a nice message about thank you for your thoughtful exchange for his question. He's honored to have been able to interact with you. Your impact on humanity reaches further than you think.
Well, thank you, Daniel.
Great question from Liz Ghani. She says, do you have any plans to someday run for public office?
You know, Liz, you know, I don't want to sound lazy. Let's start with, you know, bigger people than me in terms of, public stature. So Oprah, I think all of her career, once she was in Chicago and ensconced with that very popular and meaningful talk show, people have been asking her, from local Chicago politics to back East Coast where she was from to presidential type politics, why doesn't she run? She has such a touch on the pulse of the every woman and every man in America. She has such high regard that, you know, if she stood up there with that famous persona of hers, she would get things done, and people would, you know, like flies to honey, come to her to help her. But she has always felt that public office wasn't for her, that she could do more good. I mean, when did she start her reading club? I'm trying to remember. I think it was back when she was still doing the Chicago talk show, and all of a sudden the number of people reading books in America skyrocketed. It was just on a fast track, and it has stayed fairly high because Oprah now has come back, you know, with her magazine to touting books and finding out what people are reading. And people, you could say that America started reading again because of Oprah Winfrey. So with other things, she's always felt that she could, you know, sort of command a bit of a moral compass from outside the political arena. Now, call me lazy. I don't think anybody has ever called me lazy. A lot of things, but not lazy. But I also just, you know, I know somebody's got to do it. It's the system that we're in, isn't it, politics? But I don't see myself, I'm an active person, and I like to think in, you know, somebody who has the ability to orate and inspire. And I just don't want to go to bureaucratic meetings. I don't want to be caught in a slow cog of progress. Somebody's got to do it. I admire Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. They go to meetings. They slog through the bureaucratic, you know, steps of change. And we've decided that that's how we are going to establish our laws, change our laws in this country. But I hope that I have, some little part in furthering my values and my community's values outside the political arena. Did I dodge out of that? Did I snake out of that, in any satisfactory way? I hope so.
Gabriella says Diana and I had for president.
Yeah, no. Honestly, let me just put an aside here. What do you think Hillary's been going through since this election? I know Hillary a little bit, and she actually helped us with the Cuba swim, and I actually knew her when she was in the White House with Bill a little bit. So, here's a person I have tremendous admiration for. She's got a mind like a steel trap. She spent 40 years in politics and public service. So, we can analyze from here to the cats come home as to why, she lost this election. There's just so many factors, but aren't you curious of a person who has served? And that's what she knows how to do. She goes into office every day and sits down with people and writes referendums and goes out and lobbies. And it was since that November 8th, since that Tuesday, she has pretty much been an outsider to a degree that we don't even know what she's thinking. We don't know if she wants to get back in and work in some way. And as I said before, I guarantee she will in some way. But I just wonder for someone who, I'm an outsider to the political world, but I wonder for someone who's been a lifelong insider, how they sort of take that instant presto, boom, one day, 40-year history, and the next day, out, poof. I feel some tremendous empathy as to what she may have been going through these last couple of months.
Quick time for a swimming question.
A swimming question. Yeah, now here's something I could actually speak about with some erudition probably. Okay, what is it?
It's from Jessica Campbell. She says, "Thank you, Diana, for touching base in Key West. How can neurobiologists, me, and physiologists use well your lessons on encountering pain?"
Well, there are scientists, and I've been studied by some of them, who feel that resistance to pain and overcoming pain is truly a genetic component of our beings, just as the color of your eyes. And I don't know about that because, for instance, I can summon tremendous resilience to pain. And then there are other times when I don't care about the situation much. I'm not prepared. I haven't gone through a meditation and prepared my mind to get into a steel trap, pain resistant mode, that I can be a crybaby and scream out and act like I'm in more abject pain than anyone who's ever gone through that experience. I got a tattoo. Bonnie and I went to get matching tattoos. There were goth teenage girls in there. There were motorcycle guys. These people were getting tattooed in really sensitive places like their necks and their eyelids up here. And they were laughing, talking about the World Series. I was crying. Sheets of tears were rolling down my face. I was biting a towel. It was the outside of my ankle. I kept saying, "How long is this going to take? I don't think I can make it." And he said, "You? I thought you were the one who swam through the sharks and swam through the jellyfish and went for 2.5 days without sleep and withstood all kinds of pain." Well, yeah, I was. And I was ready for all of that. And I prepared myself for it. But with the tattoo, I just kind of went in, I didn't get myself set for it, and all of a sudden it hurt, and I didn't like it, and I was like a big crybaby. So, to answer your question, I don't think we know. There's a scientist he's a psychiatrist from University of San Diego, University of California, San Diego, and he's working with a neurologist from Harvard, and they put me through a test and found that I was at the top echelon, even compared to Navy SEALs and Marines, of being able to resist pain and stress and staying calm and getting through it. Maybe so. I feel like that's something that all of us human beings have within us. And is there a situation, is there a life situation that is upon you whereby you must summon that calm and that courage to get through the pain that's in front of you. I've seen people go through, as I'm sure you all have, just devastatingly unspeakable cancer treatments and worse. And I've seen people tough it out with grit, unimaginable grit, not a moment of self-pity, no crying, just get through it. You need to for somebody else even more than yourself, and you're going to do it. So I don't think that you just become a willful person who can take pain. I think we all are that person, and then life circumstances dictate as to whether we're going to dig down to that true grit or not. Now, are we going to issue our answer now, or are we going to issue...
If you like.
Well, I think, I'm kind of torn, but I think that, Daniel, I think that your reminder today that we all have the power of change. Live your life. That's what you're saying, right, Daniel? In Virginia, live your life with the code of ethics and the strength and the values that you believe are right to make a good life for you, and it will just emanate. It'll emanate right out your front door, down to your neighbor's door. It'll emanate out your office cubicle into your neighbor's office cubicle, and all of a sudden, people around you will be living with your values as well, if you believe in them, and they are truly of merit. So, Daniel, like it or not, baby, this beautiful shot of me pensively looking at the ocean is coming your way. Thank you all so very much for tuning in today. I'm not sure when our next Facebook Live will be. Every Saturday, Bonnie and I do a Facebook Live on the Everwalk Facebook page, and we've been getting some kind of cool people tuning in and walking with us, so you join us as well. That's 12:30 Pacific time every Saturday, and I do mine mostly on Fridays, but we'll announce on the Facebook page when the next one is be. Thank you so much. Enjoyed all of you being with me.